Well, hello and welcome to my latest video. I thought it was about time I came into the garage and I did another one in my series, bicycle maintenance with a fairly average mechanic. The fairly average mechanic being moi. And if you've not had a look at this playlist before, if you've not jumped in and tried out one or two or 17 or 18 of the videos, I suggest you do so. You may be new to the bicycle, you may be not new to the bicycle, you may be an experienced roadie, one of those rough stuff, lufty-tufty fellowship types. You may even be a Brompton rider. It may even be an e-bike rider, not a real cyclist, but still you want to know a little bit about bicycle maintenance. I suggest you dive in and see if there's something there that takes your fancy. So I thought what we'd do today is a quite important element of bike maintenance that I think, and that is about pumping up your tyres, or as we say in the trade, inflating your tyres. So the particular video I'm going to be doing for you now is how to use a track pump. So let's get stuck in, shall we? Come with me to the workshop. Actually, I'm already in the workshop, but come with me to where we make the rest of the video. Well, here we are, we're in the workshop area, and it's important when you're going to use the track pump that you have a workshop area, or you create a workshop area. Now, if you're living in a house and you're lucky to have an annex, say a granny flat, so you've got a grandparent living with you, what I suggest you do is you move your grandparent into a single room, and then maybe use that spare room, the bedroom or the living room, whatever it was, and you use that as your workshop. And if you have children, perhaps they're at the age of 15, 16, something like that, they're ready to leave home, what I suggest you do is you shuffle them, kind of shuffle them out of the door, perhaps give them a knapsack and a few bobs from McDonald's on the way, and then you can take over their bedroom and you can turn that into a workshop if you don't have an actual workshop in your house. So that's the first piece of equipment that you're going to need. Second thing you're going to need is, I find it always useful if you're going to use the track pump, is you have a wheel. In other words, you have a tyre that needs pumping up. Now, I suppose it ought to be said, if you don't have a tyre that you need pumping up, for example, you're not a cyclist, then actually this video is probably not worth the few moments of your time, unless of course you've got nothing to do on this day of 47 degrees as the temperature currently is in my garage. I found that outside it was only 42 degrees, which I don't really feel is quite warm enough. So I've brought in a couple of fan heaters, a couple of electric bar fires, that sort of thing, and managed to raise the temperature up to what I find is quite a comfortable 47 degrees. That's Fahrenheit, of course, because we have to use Fahrenheit now in this country. We're no longer allowed to use those European temperatures. So anyway, so I've got a tyre. I've got a tyre that needs pumping up. And then the other thing that I find particularly useful when you want to use a track pump is, it's a track pump, yes. I'm not even sure I've got one. Oh, hang on, there's one over there. Oh, don't go away. And this is a track pump. And you're saying to yourself, well, it's like a pump to me, Julian. And yes, it is. And it's called a track pump because, actually, I don't know why it's called a track pump. I suppose it's called a track pump because occasionally people use it at the track, i.e. the cycle track. And it's called a pump because it is a pump. Now, why is it called a pump? Well, you could say, well, it's called a pump because it pumps up tyres. But that's kind of circular reasoning, isn't it? Because you say, well, okay, well, how can you pump up the tyres without a pump? And how do you know that the pump pumps unless you know what a pump pumps? Does that make sense? So if you know what the derivation of pump is, now I know they used to have water pumps in the old days, back in the 1980s, when people had to go down to the village, kind of village marketplace, and they had to pump water using a pump. So I suppose they possibly adapted that particular system and then called it a track pump. And the thing about the track pump is, if you have a normal cycle pump, right, like this one, for example, and when you pump it, okay, it draws air from the air. Do you see what I mean? So when you do that action, you suck in the air from the air, and then when you do that action, you pump out the air that was in the air but then was in the pump, and then it goes into the tyre. But the thing about a track pump, and the reason why a track pump is much better than a normal pump, particularly when you're in the workshop, is because the air is actually contained in this kind of container here. So it's not using the kind of general air that the rest of us breathe. It's actually preloaded with special fair trade, locally sourced artisan air that's a low carbon footprint air, kind of vegan air. And that makes it particularly effective when you're pumping up a tyre. So let's try and move on a bit, shall we? At the end of the pump, there is this thing here, and we call this a connector, all right? There will be a test at the end, so we call this a connector. And the reason it's called a connector is because it connects onto the tyre. So let's find our tyre, and let's find our valve. Can you see here? This is a valve. Now, this is called a Presta valve, and the reason it's called a Presta valve is you see you can press it like that. The other type of valve, which is the sort of valve that you tend to find on cars and mountain bikes and BMX bikes and Brompton, but not proper bikes, is called a Schrader or Schrader valve, named after Billy Bob Schrader, who was the first person who developed it, whereas the Presta valve was named after Presta John, who was an explorer in South Africa who first started the pumping up of tyres. They used to, before they used bicycles, of course, they used mules, asses, donkeys, horses, that kind of thing to transport themselves. And the horses had a Presta valve on them, or he called it a Presta valve, and that's how he used to feed them. So he adapted that name when he invented the tyre. So what we do is we attach the connector, this is the connector, to the valve like that. Can you see what I'm doing? And on this particular model, you secure the connector by opening up that lever. All right, on your track pump, it may be a screw-in system, it may be this kind of lever system. I suggest you find out from your track pump the sort of connector that it's got, and if you're not clear, you could Google it, or you could phone. You could phone the track pump helpline. You can Google that. You can find the helpline. And if you phone them up, you'll get through to a very helpful person. Could be a man, could be a woman. There'll be a very helpful person. You explain to them the type of valve you've got, and they'll explain to you how you connect the connector from your track pump onto the valve. All right, so we've done that. And now the next thing we do is we pump. All right, now you can only see the pump, the handle of the pump, right? This is the handle of the pump coming up. You can't see it going down because that's below the height of the lens on my camera, and frankly it's a little bit too hot. I can't be bothered to move the lens downwards. So you're going to have to trust me when I say, when I lift it up like this, I'm lifting it up, and now I'm pushing it down. You're going to have to trust me that I am actually pushing it down, all right? And then when I lift it up again like that, you see I'm pushing it down. You can't see the bit where I'm pushing it down, but what's happening in this action is that the pump is taking the air that's in the pump and it's transferring it to the tyre. Now you can't see the tyre because that's the other side of the lens, so I can't be bothered to move the lens. So I'm lifting it up, and now I go, oh look, I'm putting in some effort. Oh look, I'm putting in some effort. And on this particular track pump, you can't see that either, but perhaps I'll just turn that around so you can see it. You can see here, quite like it done, isn't it? It's not really, poor taste, Julian. I don't think you should do that. Anyway, there's a gauge here, right? So I'll show you this gauge. Here is the gauge, and that gives you the amount of pressure that you want to put into your tyre. Now, if you're an old school kind of rough-tufty, rough stuff fellowship type of Audax rider, you will be very concerned about what precisely pounds per square inch or pounds per square centimetre, or is it kilograms per square yard? I'm not sure. Anyway, there's some calculation. Always Google it if you're not sure what to do, or phone the helpline. And the pounds per square inch is the amount of pressure, okay, the amount of pressure that is in the tyre. Now, all I really want to do is have a tyre that feels fairly hard when I go like that, all right? Now, you might say, well, that's not very scientific, Julian, but I always find that that's quite a good method of testing the hardness of something. So you just squeeze it between your fingers, and if it's hard, then you know it's ready. And
I'm just pumping this up now. Now you can see it's getting a little bit more difficult, so because the tire is getting harder and harder. You see, so I'm going to squeeze it with my finger there. Oh, it's getting quite hard. And then you push it right down. And, oh, look, that's nearly, what is it, 180? No, it's 2,000. Oh, it's 47 degrees of pressure in the tire. But don't overdo it, because either you or the pump, or indeed the pump, or indeed the tire might explode. So we finished that. We finished pumping it up, and I'm now going to remove the connector. There we are, removing the connector like that. Oh, isn't that a satisfying sound there? It's just broken the spokes. And then we tighten up the valve on this particular Presta valve. We tighten it up by screwing it like that. Shrouder valve, I'm not sure how you do that, but if you Google it and phone the helpline, and they'll tell you how to seal the Schrader or Shrouder, not quite sure how you pronounce it, valve. So I've done that. I've pumped up the tyre. You've seen how the track pump works. You've learnt something. So there you are. Bicycle maintenance with a distinctly average, or as he's known to his friends, shit mechanic, and one nice, hard, pumped up tyre. Thanks for watching. Hope you're staying cool, and see you next time.